My fiancé smiled at me as I walked down the aisle. I smiled back. Because I had no idea he'd been lying to me for the last 3 years. Everyone says you remember every detail of your wedding day. They're wrong. You remember the moments that change your life. The way my dad squeezed my hand before the music started. The nervous smile on my fiancé's face as he waited for me at the altar. The sound of my best friend Claire, quietly crying in the front row. Those moments stayed with me. Everything else became a blur. If someone had whispered in my ear right then that my entire relationship was built on a secret, I would have laughed. Daniel wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But he was patient, kind, dependable, or at least, that's who I believed I was marrying. We met 3 years earlier in Chicago. I had just started working as a project coordinator for an architecture firm, and he was an engineer hired by another company on the same downtown redevelopment project. Our first conversation lasted maybe 2 minutes. The elevator got stuck between floors. Most people panicked. Daniel made everyone laugh. By the time the doors finally opened, we'd exchanged names. A week later, we ran into each other at the coffee shop across the street. "I'm starting to think the universe wants us to meet," he joked. I was thinking the same thing. That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends together. Weekends became a relationship that felt easy, comfortable, safe. My parents adored him. My younger brother called him the guy who actually listens. Even my grandmother, who trusted almost no one, once told me, "That young man looks at you like you're home." I believed her. Looking back now, there were little things that didn't make sense, not enough to scare me. Just enough that I ignored them. Daniel hated having his picture taken. He said it was because he'd gained weight in college and never got over being self-conscious. I accepted that. He rarely talked about high school. Whenever stories drifted toward childhood memories, he'd smile and somehow change the subject. I figured everyone had things they preferred not to revisit. He also kept his phone face down. Always. At restaurants. On the couch. Even while charging overnight. The first time I teased him about it, he laughed. "I work with confidential engineering contracts." That sounded reasonable, so I never questioned it again. Trust is funny. Once you decide someone deserves it, your brain starts explaining away every uncomfortable feeling. About a year into dating, I suggested we visit his hometown in Indiana. He hesitated. "My parents travel a lot. We'll go another time." Another time never came. Instead, his parents visited us. Only once. His mother, Susan, hugged me warmly. His father, Richard, was polite, but quiet. They stayed for less than 4 hours. It struck me as odd, but every family is different. Mine certainly wasn't perfect. After they left, I asked Daniel why they seemed so eager to get back home. "They've never liked big cities." That explanation seemed simple enough. Life moved forward. He proposed on a rainy October evening beside Lake Michigan. There wasn't a crowd. There wasn't a photographer hiding behind a tree. Just the two of us. "I don't want a perfect proposal," he said, kneeling with rain dripping off his jacket. "I just want a real marriage." I cried before he even finished asking. For the next year, we planned our wedding together. At least I thought we did. He never cared about flowers. Never argued over seating charts. Never complained about expenses. Whenever I asked his opinion, he'd smile. "Whatever makes you happy." Everyone told me how lucky I was. I believed them. About 6 weeks before the wedding, something happened that should have made me stop. Claire and I were addressing invitations at my apartment. Daniel was working late. At least, that's what he'd told me. Claire picked up one RSVP card. "Who's Melissa Carter?" I looked over. "My cousin." "No." She pointed toward the guest list. "I mean this Melissa Carter." Next to the name was a small note in Daniel's handwriting. "Do not invite." I frowned. That's strange. Did he say why? No. When he came home that evening, I asked casually, "Oh." He barely looked at the list. "Old coworker." So why was she on the original guest list? Planning mistake. That was it. No hesitation, no nervousness. Nothing. I believed him. Again. A few weeks later, another strange thing happened. I stopped by his office with lunch. His assistant looked confused. Oh. What? I thought Daniel took the day off. He told me he had meetings. She immediately looked uncomfortable. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe. That word carried me through our entire relationship. Maybe she remembered wrong. Maybe his plans changed. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. When someone lies well, maybe becomes your favorite word. The night before our wedding, we stayed apart to follow tradition. Claire slept over at my parents' house with me. Around midnight, she found me sitting awake in the kitchen. You nervous? A little. She smiled. Cold feet? No. I stared into my tea. I just have this weird feeling. What kind of feeling? I don't know. She sat beside me. You think something's wrong? I think. I laughed at myself. I think tomorrow changes everything. It usually does. She reached across the table. You love him? More than anything. You trust him? With my life. She smiled. Then get some sleep. I wish I'd told her about the feeling. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe it would have changed everything. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were heartfelt. The kiss was perfect. Everyone applauded. For a little while, I thought my instincts had simply been wedding nerves. Then the reception began. About halfway through dinner, Daniel's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. For the first time all day, I saw genuine fear on his face. He stood so quickly that his chair nearly tipped over. I'll be right back. Everything okay? He forced a smile. Work emergency. Today? It'll only take a minute. I watched him disappear through the ballroom doors. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Something didn't feel right. I excused myself and quietly followed him into the hotel hallway. I could hear his voice before I saw him. He wasn't talking like a groom interrupted by work. He sounded desperate. No. A long pause. I told you not to come here. Another silence. Then the words that stopped me cold. I've already married her. My heart started pounding. I took one more step toward the corner. Just before I could see who he was talking to, a woman's voice answered. You should have told her the truth before it was too late. I froze. And then Daniel slowly turned toward the hallway. Our eyes met. For a split second, neither of us moved. Daniel's face lost every bit of color. The confidence I'd seen at the altar less than an hour earlier disappeared completely. He looked terrified. The woman standing across from him slowly turned toward me. She was probably in her early 30s, dressed in a navy blue dress that looked elegant enough for a wedding guest. She wasn't crying or angry. She just looked exhausted. I stepped closer. Who is she? Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I asked you a question. It's not what you think. I laughed once. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that escapes when your heart is trying to protect itself. I just heard you say, I've already married her. He rubbed both hands across his face. Emily. The woman interrupted him. Don't, she said quietly. You don't get to lie anymore. She looked at me with genuine sympathy. My name is Melissa. The name hit me immediately. The RSVP list. Do not invite. My stomach twisted. I knew your name, I whispered. She nodded sadly. I figured you would, eventually. Daniel stepped between us. Please, let's go somewhere private. No, I said. If you're going to destroy my life, you're going to do it looking me in the eye. Melissa folded her arms. I agree. Daniel looked trapped. He stared at the carpet for several long seconds, before finally speaking. I should have told you a long time ago. Start talking. He swallowed hard. When I met you, I wasn't honest about my past. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear him. I was engaged before. I closed my eyes for a moment. That hurt. But it wasn't the disaster I had expected. You hid an engagement? Yes. I took a slow breath. Okay. My voice was shaking. That was selfish, but people have past relationships. Is that really what this is about? Daniel looked at Melissa. She slowly shook her head. No. He covered his face. I didn't just break off the engagement. The hallway became painfully quiet. Melissa spoke instead. They got married. Everything inside me seemed to stop. I stared at her. What? She looked like she wished she didn't have to say the words. I'm his wife. The world tilted. I actually reached for the wall because I thought I might collapse. No. It came out as barely a whisper. No. Daniel stepped toward me. Emily! I backed away. Don't touch me. He froze. My mind refused to accept what I'd heard. Wife? I repeated the word like it belonged to another language. You. I looked at Melissa. You said wife. She nodded. We married almost 4 years ago. 4 years. I'd known Daniel for 3. My knees became weak. So. I struggled to breathe. So, he was already married when we met. Neither of them answered. They didn't have to. The silence told me everything. I looked at the wedding ring on my finger. It suddenly felt unbearably heavy. You let me plan a wedding. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I know. You proposed. I know. You stood in front of my family. I know. You said vows. His shoulders shook. I know. I pulled the ring off my finger. So, none of it meant anything? It meant everything. I stared at him in disbelief. How dare you? Melissa quietly reached into her purse. I brought these because I knew he wouldn't tell you. She handed me a thick envelope. Inside were copies of a marriage certificate, photographs, tax documents, insurance forms, everything. Every page proved the same horrifying truth. Daniel Carter, married to Melissa Carter, 3 years before he ever met me. I looked up. When were you planning to tell me? He couldn't answer. Melissa did. He wasn't. Another silence settled over us. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning inside me. Why? Daniel sank onto a bench in the hallway. We separated. Melissa nodded. That's true. He looked at me desperately. We'd been living apart for almost a year. Melissa spoke calmly. But we were never divorced. Daniel closed his eyes. I kept putting it off. Putting what off? The divorce. Why? He hesitated. Melissa answered again. Money. Daniel looked ashamed. My father left me part ownership of our family's construction company. He finally met my eyes. If I divorced before certain trust agreements matured. He couldn't finish. Melissa did. He would have lost his ownership interest. I blinked. So, you stayed legally married? Yes? For money. He lowered his head. Yes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You built an entire relationship with me while secretly staying married because it was financially convenient? I loved you. No. I shook my head. You loved what you wanted. Tears streamed down his face. I was going to fix everything. When? He didn't answer. Before the honeymoon? Silence. After our first anniversary? Silence. When we had kids? Silence. Every unanswered question hurt more than the last. Melissa sighed. I only found out about the wedding 3 weeks ago. I looked at her. What? I knew he was dating someone. She swallowed. He told me he'd ended the relationship months ago. Daniel stared at the floor. I believed him. She continued. Then one of my coworkers showed me your wedding website. I remembered creating it. Our engagement photos. Our story. Our countdown. Everything. I confronted him. Melissa looked exhausted. He promised he'd tell you. Daniel whispered. I wanted to. I laughed bitterly. No. You wanted more time. He couldn't argue. Because it was true. Melissa looked at me. I came today hoping I could stop the ceremony. My chest tightened. But by the time I arrived, She looked toward the ballroom. It was already over. I realized then why Daniel had panicked when his phone rang. She'd arrived. She'd called him. He'd slipped away before she walked into the reception. None of this had been an accident. I looked down at my wedding dress. It suddenly felt like a costume. I can't go back in there. Melissa gently touched my arm. You don't have to. I nodded slowly. Then I took a deep breath. Actually? I looked toward the ballroom doors. Yes. I do. Daniel stood immediately. Emily, please. I ignored him. The reception was still going when I walked back inside. My parents smiled when they saw me. So, there you are? My mom said. We're about to cut the cake. I looked around the room. More than 100 people. Friends, family, co-workers, people who had spent months celebrating our future. The DJ smiled. There they are. I walked straight to the microphone beside the dance floor. The room slowly became quiet. Daniel rushed in behind me. Emily. I picked up the microphone before he could stop me. I'm really sorry, everyone. Every face turned toward me. I know this isn't how weddings are supposed to go. The room became completely silent. I held up my left hand. I won't be needing this anymore. I slipped off the wedding ring and placed it on the cake table. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. I looked directly at Daniel. My husband. I paused. Is already married. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Then the room erupted with confusion. What? Is this a joke? No way. Daniel tried reaching for the microphone. I stepped back. Don't. He stopped. I wasn't interested in humiliating him. I was interested in telling the truth. Melissa quietly entered the ballroom. She didn't have to say a word. The documents in her hands said enough. My father walked over to Daniel. Tell me she's wrong. Daniel couldn't. That silence answered everyone. The reception ended within minutes. People left quietly. Some hugged me. Some cried. Some simply didn't know what to say. I went home with my parents that night. I cried until sunrise. The weeks that followed were painful. I had to cancel contracts, return gifts, explain the truth over and over again. Daniel called every day for nearly a month. I never answered. He wrote letters. I never opened them. Melissa eventually finalized the divorce he'd delayed for years. She later sent me one final message. I hope we both find the peace he never gave us. I wrote back. I hope so too. That was the last time we spoke. It's been 4 years now. I eventually moved to Seattle, started over, met people who valued honesty more than appearances. I'm engaged again. This time, there are no secrets. My fiancé once told me something that still makes me emotional. Love shouldn't require detective work. He's right. Trust isn't something you prove by ignoring red flags. It's something two people protect together. Looking back, I don't think the hardest part was losing Daniel. The hardest part was realizing I'd fallen in love with someone who never truly existed. The man I loved was a story built on half-truths and postponed honesty. But losing that illusion made room for something real. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. The truth may arrive late, and it may hurt more than you ever imagined, but it is still kinder than a beautiful lie that steals years of your life. And if someone asks you to build a future with them while they're hiding the foundation, don't blame yourself when the house eventually falls. Walk away, rebuild, and make sure the next home you create is built on honesty from the very first brick.